Nathan Carter never thought he would be standing in the royal palace. He was not a knight or a soldier of high rank. He was just a simple field medic who had seen too much war and too many wounded men. He had been trained to use bandages and herbs, not swords or crowns. Yet on that strange evening, fate placed him before Queen Alina herself. The attack on her convoy came fast. One moment there were shouts of celebration as the Queen's carriage passed through the crowded street. In the next moment the sound of steel clashed against shields. Arrows rained from rooftops. Soldiers shouted orders, and the people scattered in fear. Nathan had been walking nearby, carrying his worn bag of supplies, when the chaos broke. He should have run, but something inside him told him to stay. Through the noise, he saw her carriage fall to the side. Horses cried out, guards rushed to defend, and then he saw her. Queen Alina, dressed in her royal gown, had been struck by a blade during the ambush. Her hand pressed against her side, and crimson spread across her dress. Her eyes were sharp and proud, but her steps faltered. Without thinking, Nathan rushed toward her. A soldier tried to stop him, shouting that the Queen must not be touched by common hands. But Nathan pushed past him. She was falling, and if he did not act now, she would die. He caught her before she hit the ground. Her breath came in short gasps. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Nathan pulled her hand away from her wound and placed his own hands against it. He expected to feel only warm blood, but instead, something strange happened. A glow, soft and golden, spread from his palms. He did not understand it, yet it flowed through him like water rushing through a broken dam. The Queen's eyes widened. She stared at him, shocked and confused, as the warmth spread across her body. The pain on her face slowly eased, though she still trembled from the loss of blood. Her voice was weak, but she whispered words that froze him in place. "That is not possible," she said softly. "Only a spouse may hold such power." Nathan had no answer. He had never known such a gift. His hands had healed small wounds in the past, but nothing like this. Never had he felt such power move from his body into another. He wanted to tell her it was not magic, only skill, but he could see with his own eyes that it was more. The guards stood frozen. Some whispered in disbelief. One of them drew his sword and said Nathan should be taken away for touching the Queen in such a forbidden way. But Queen Alina, still weak but standing, raised her hand and stopped them. "He saved me," she said. "None of you could." Nathan felt the weight of her words press down on him. The glow from his hands faded, but the wound was already closing. The blood had stopped, the pain had eased, and she stood taller than before. She leaned on him for a moment, and in that instant, he realized he had done something that might change his life forever. The Queen looked at him again, her expression unreadable. "Tell me your name," she asked. "Nathan," he replied quietly. The soldiers looked uneasy. Some still held their weapons, unsure whether to treat him as savior or criminal. But the Queen kept her gaze on him, and her voice was calm yet firm. "Nathan," she said, "you have crossed into a bond that no ordinary man should cross. Remember this moment, for it cannot be undone." Nathan wanted to ask what she meant, but the words caught in his throat. He did not understand the strange power in his hands, nor the meaning of her warning. He only knew that the Queen lived, and that his touch had saved her. The people around them bowed in shock as the Queen was led back to the palace. Nathan walked beside her, silent and uncertain. The night that had begun with blood and steel now carried a secret he could not escape. And though he did not know it yet, his life would never be the same again. Nathan walked beside the Queen as the guards led her through the ruined streets back to the palace. People moved aside quickly, whispering as they passed. Many had seen what happened. They had seen the strange glow in his hands and the way her wound closed. Their faces carried both awe and fear, as if they had witnessed something forbidden. Inside the palace, the Queen was helped into her chambers. The finest healers were called, but when they examined her, they found no wound. The cut that should have left her weak was nothing more than a faint scar. They looked at one another in silence and finally stepped back, bowing to her. The Queen's eyes turned toward Nathan. He stood quietly near the door, unsure if he would be punished or praised. His heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to leave, to slip away before questions came. But her gaze held him in place. "You should not be here," one of the captains said. "Your hands touched what only belongs to the chosen." The Queen lifted her hand, silencing the captain. He saved me, she replied. Without him, I would not be standing here. The words settled like heavy stones in the room. Guards exchanged uneasy glances. Tradition was strong in the kingdom. Everyone knew that the healing touch was sacred, and that only a husband could give such life to the queen. Yet this simple medic, a man of no title, had broken that line. Nathan lowered his eyes, speaking softly. I did not know, my queen. I only wanted to stop the bleeding. Her voice was calm but firm. Yet you did more than stop it, gave me life. He had no answer. He felt as if a storm had gathered around him, one he could not escape. Later that night, he was summoned again. The queen sat by a window overlooking the city. The fires from the attack still burned in the distance, and the cries of the wounded reached faintly into the palace. She turned her head when he entered, her eyes clear and searching. Tell me, Nathan, she said. How did you do it? He shook his head. I do not know. I only pressed my hands against the wound. Something flowed from me, something I cannot explain. She studied him in silence for a moment. Then she spoke again, her words slow and deliberate. Do you understand what you have done? No man may heal me in such a way unless he is bound to me. This is the law of our ancestors. The power you carry is not common. He frowned, confused. I am no nobleman. I am not of your court. I have no bond with you. Her eyes narrowed slightly, though not in anger, yet your hands carried the bond. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. If this bond is real, then what does it mean for me? She turned back to the window, her face lit by the glow of the torches outside. It means your life is no longer your own. The court will see you as more than a stranger. Some will see you as a threat. Others will see you as chosen. He felt the weight of her words pressing against his chest. He had saved her life, but in doing so, he had crossed into a world he did not belong to. The door opened suddenly, and two lords entered, their robes heavy with gold thread. They bowed to the queen but cast suspicious glances at Nathan. Your Majesty, one of them said, we have heard troubling things. The people say a commoner placed his hands upon you and healed what no healer could. Is this true? Lena did not look away. It is true, she said. The lords frowned deeply. Then he must be questioned. No man can carry such power without reason. Nathan's heart raced, but before he could speak, the queen raised her hand once more. He will not be questioned by you. He saved me when no one else could. That is all that matters. The lords bowed, though their eyes burned with distrust. When they left, silence filled the chamber again. The queen looked back at Nathan. From this night forward, nothing will be the same. Cannot walk away from what has been done. The bond is written in the eyes of every witness. Remember that, Nathan. He nodded slowly, though he still did not understand the full weight of her words. Deep inside, he knew his life as a simple Manek was over. Whatever lay ahead, it was tied to the queen, and there was no turning back. Days passed, but the memory of that night did not fade. The palace returned to calm on the outside, yet whispers filled every hallway. Servants spoke in low voices about Nathan, the medic who had touched the queen in a way no other man could. Guards eyed him with suspicion, unsure if they should honor him or fear him. Nobles debated in secret rooms, their words filled with doubt and envy. Nathan tried to keep to himself. He still carried his old bag of bandages and herbs, walking through the palace to tend to the wounded from the attack. Soldiers who once doubted him now came quietly for his help, for they had seen with their own eyes how quickly his hands could heal. Some bowed their heads in gratitude. Others kept their distance, unsettled by his gift. The queen remained firm in her choice to protect him. Each time a noble raised the question of removing him from the palace, she spoke clearly and reminded them that he had saved her life. Her words silenced many, but not all. One evening the queen called for him again. She stood on the balcony overlooking the courtyard where torches burned and banners of the kingdom swayed in the wind. She wore a simple gown rather than her crown, yet her presence was still strong. Nathan, she said, her voice soft but steady, the court grows restless. They believe your touch binds us. They believe you stand where no man should. He lowered his head. I never asked for this bond, only did what I thought was right. Her eyes studied him carefully. I know, but right or not, it has changed everything. There are lords who wish to test you. They will not believe until they see your loyalty with their own eyes. He frowned, unsure of what she meant. What test? Before she could answer, the sound of horns echoed across the courtyard. Riders arrived at the palace gates, carrying news of raids along the border. A rival warlord had gathered men and threatened to march on the kingdom. The queen turned back to him. She said, "They will watch to see if you stand with me or if you run." The next morning, Nathan was given armor, though it felt strange on his shoulders. He was not a knight, but the queen insisted he march with her guard. As they rode out from the palace, the people gathered to watch. Some cheered his name, others called him an intruder, but all of them knew his face. On the battlefield, he stayed close to the queen's side. Arrows flew, swords clashed, and the roar of battle shook the ground. Nathan fought clumsily at first, but his courage grew as the day went on. When soldiers fell, he rushed to them, pressing his hands to their wounds. Again the strange light poured from him, sealing cuts and stopping blood. Men who had been close to death rose to their feet and returned to the fight. The soldiers began to look at him differently. They no longer saw only a commoner. They saw a man who would not abandon them, a man who gave back their strength. Whispers spread through the ranks, calling him chosen. The queen fought as well, her sword flashing in the sun, her voice strong as she gave orders. But when she stumbled from a strike against her shield, it was Nathan who caught her, just as he had before. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and he felt the bond between them tighten. When the battle ended, the enemy scattered, and the queen's army stood victorious. Yet the true victory was not only the fight, but the way the soldiers looked at Nathan. They bowed their heads in respect, not because the queen ordered it, but because they had seen his heart. That night, as campfires lit the field, the queen approached him. "You stood when others doubted," she said. "You are part of this kingdom's strength." Nathan listened quietly, unsure how to respond. He was still only a medic in his own eyes, but something greater was unfolding. He looked at her, the firelight reflecting in her eyes, and he realized he was bound not only by fate, but by choice. He could walk away, but deep inside he knew he would never leave her side. The days after the battle brought both praise and doubt. The soldiers who had fought beside Nathan spoke of his courage and his strange gift with respect. They told stories of how he had healed wounds in the middle of battle and how his presence had kept the queen alive. But inside the palace, whispers grew louder. The nobles gathered in their halls, speaking of him as if he were a shadow over the throne. Nathan felt the weight of it every time he walked through the palace corridors. Servants bowed to him now, but with nervous eyes. Guards stood stiffly, unsure if they should treat him as a friend or a danger. He wanted to disappear back into the life he once knew, but that door was closed. The bond between him and the queen could not be undone. One evening, the queen summoned him to the great hall. The long tables were filled with lords and advisors, their voices low but sharp. As he entered, silence fell. Queen Elena sat at the head, her crown shining under the light of the torches. Her gaze was steady, but there was tension in her voice when she spoke. "Nathan," she said, "these men question your place here. They say your bond with me is not chosen by law, but forced by chance. They say you threaten the order of the kingdom." Nathan stood quietly. He did not know what words would ease their doubt. Finally, he said, "I never asked for this. I only acted when the queen was in danger. If my hands carry a gift, it was not of my making." A noble rose from the table, his voice filled with anger. "Then prove your loyalty. Words mean nothing. If you are bound to the queen, stand for her as a husband would. Bleed for her if you must. Only then will we believe." The hall stirred with murmurs. The queen raised her hand to silence them, but she did not dismiss the challenge. Instead, she looked at Nathan. "They demand a test of loyalty," she said. "Will you face it?" Nathan's heart pounded, but he nodded. "I will." The next day, he was brought to the training grounds. Knights in armor circled around, their faces hard. At the center, a tall commander stepped forward with a blade in hand. "Show us you are more than words," he said. "Stand and fight." Nathan had no fine sword or years of training. He held only a simple weapon given to him, his hands shaking slightly as he raised it. The fight began, and the commander struck with strength. Nathan stumbled, barely blocking the blows, but he did not run. Every time he was knocked down, he rose again. His arms burned, his chest heaved, but he refused to stop. The crowd watched closely. Some shouted for him to fall. Others urged him on.
Ow.
Then, when the commander landed a heavy strike that cut across his arm, blood flowed. The pain was sharp, but Nathan dropped his weapon and pressed his own hand against the wound. Before their eyes, the light returned, sealing the cut. Gasps spread through the crowd. The commander lowered his blade, stepping back in shock. Nathan stood, breathing hard but unbroken. "I will not raise myself above you," he said to the crowd, "but I will not turn away from her. My life is hers now." The queen stepped forward, her eyes never leaving his. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You have faced their test. No one can deny what they saw. You stood where others would fall." The knights bowed their heads, some with respect, others with heavy reluctance. The nobles who had doubted him fell silent. Though their envy remained, they could not speak against what had been proven. That night, the queen walked with Nathan through the gardens of the palace. The moonlight touched the leaves, and the air was still. She spoke quietly. Her words meant only for him. "Today you showed them your strength, but more than that, you showed them your heart. Many will still resist, but they can no longer deny you." Nathan looked at her, his voice low. "I never wished for power or title. I only wanted to save lives." She gave a small smile, though her eyes carried the weight of what was to come. "Then, perhaps that is why fate chose you. A man who does not seek power is the one most worthy to carry it." Nathan felt the truth in her words, though he still struggled to accept it. He had walked a path he never expected, and it had led him here, beside a queen who now trusted him above all. Yet deep inside, he knew the greatest trial was still ahead. The kingdom slowly returned to peace after the battles and trials, yet the air inside the palace was still heavy. Whispers of Nathan's bond with the queen continued to move through the halls. Some spoke of him with respect, others with suspicion, and a few with open anger. But the truth could not be denied anymore. He had stood by the queen through every test, and his gift had saved lives again and again. Nathan spent his days walking among the soldiers and the people. He healed the wounded, comforted the sick, and never asked for anything in return. The people began to see him not only as a man close to the queen, but as someone who carried their pain and shared their struggles. Children followed him in the streets, and mothers offered him bread as thanks. The queen watched all this with quiet eyes. She had always known that power came with weight, and now she saw how heavy it was on him. One evening, she called him to the throne room. The great hall was empty except for her and the soft glow of the torches. She stood without her crown, her voice gentle but steady. "Nathan," she said, "you have given much to me and to this kingdom, yet there is still one truth left unspoken. The bond that you placed upon me cannot be erased. Do you understand what it means?" He lowered his head. "I understand only that my life is no longer my own. I cannot walk away even if I wished to." She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on his. "The bond is more than duty. By law and by tradition, the touch you gave me is the touch of a husband. You may not have chosen it, but it is upon us both. I must decide if I will accept it." His heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He had never thought of himself as worthy of her. She was a queen, a ruler, and he was only a medic, who had been in the wrong place at the right time. Yet as he stood before her, he felt the weight of her words settle deep inside him. Days later, the queen called her court together. Nobles, soldiers, and common folk filled the hall. The banners of the kingdom hung above, and silence fell as she rose from her throne. Nathan stood at her side, uncertain and uneasy, as countless eyes turned toward him. The queen's voice carried across the hall, steady and clear. "Many of you question why this man stands beside me. Many of you doubt his place, but hear me now. When I was wounded, it was his hands that gave me life. When my enemies rose, it was his courage that stood against them. When doubt filled your hearts, it was his strength that proved true." The nobles shifted uneasily, but none dared speak. The soldiers nodded slowly, their respect clear. The common folk listened closely, their faces filled with hope. The queen turned to Nathan, her words strong enough for all to hear. "Tradition says that the bond he gave me is the bond of a husband, and I will not deny it. Fate chose him when no law could. From this day, I accept what has been written, not by hands of men, but by the truth of life itself." The hall erupted in voices, some in shock, some in joy, others in anger. But the queen did not waver. She reached for Nathan's hand, and when their fingers touched, the same golden glow spread once more. The people gasped, for the bond was no longer a rumor. It was alive before their eyes. Nathan stood in silence, his heart overwhelmed. He had never asked for this, yet he could not deny the path he had walked. He looked into the queen's eyes and saw not only duty, but trust, and something deeper. The court bowed one by one, some slowly, others with reluctant grace. The soldiers knelt, and soon even the nobles lowered their heads. The people outside the hall cheered when word reached them, and the sound carried through the city. In that moment, Nathan understood the truth. He was no longer only a medic. He was bound to a queen, not by title or law, but by the power of choice and sacrifice. And as the glow faded, leaving only their joined hands, he knew he would never walk away from her side.